Let's check this out.
As we have been reporting, the White House says its tariffs on China now total 145%.
Wow.
Trump administration officials clarified this morning. This comes from the 125% tariff on Chinese goods announced Wednesday, in addition to a 20% tariff implemented when the president took office. China has retaliated against the United States with an 84% levy on American products, which is currently in effect. China's Commerce Ministry vowed on Wednesday to, quote, fight to the end, and called President Trump's tariffs a, quote, typical unilateral bullying practice. A lot to break down on this. Joining us now is Dongyuan Liu, also known as Zoe. She is the Maurice R. Greenberg Senior Fellow for China Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Zoe, thank you so much for being with us here. President Trump says that he and Chinese President Xi Jinping still have a relatively close relationship, which is interesting when you hear about all this tit for tat that we're seeing. Is that still the case right now? And what could the ramifications be of this trade war on other issues between the two countries?
You know, Nancy, you touched upon a very interesting point, which is the leadership relationship. You know, from when I was in school, my teacher told me that countries do not shake hands with each other. It's people and the leaders. I think it's very interesting that so far, despite President Trump's hiking tariff on China, he still talks about he respects President Xi Jinping, but then at the same time, you also see a asymmetric response from China. Asymmetric in the sense that President Xi Jinping, he himself, so far has not talked about anything or responded directly to America's tariff on Chinese export, whereas a lot of the responses in terms of a tit-for-tat retaliation comes from the Ministry of Commerce and other Chinese diplomats.
But is there this concern, though, as we hear about trade war and these escalating tensions, that this could carry on to other realms between the two countries?
Nah.
That is certainly a risk. You know, the spillover effect in terms from trade tension to other broader.
If China's smart, they'll just back up on their tariffs, shake hands with Trump, let Daddy do his business, and go back home.
Strategic area, especially military confrontation. And remember back in 2017, during President Trump's first administration, the U.S. national security strategy identified China or defined China for the first time as a strategic competitor. So from that time onward, that is how the Chinese considers they were being viewed by the U.S. government.
And so we want to ask you about how the Chinese government has approached all of this. They're hitting back with tariffs of their own. What is behind their strategy? What do you think is in their mindset?
It's easy to think about China's response as being tit for tat, and also sort of China tries to drive a hard bargain. And I certainly think that there is a lot of reason to believe.
China doesn't try to drive a hard bargain. They just try to rip us and everybody else off. They just want to get rich off everyone else's money.
From Chinese culture, they do not want to lose face, especially being publicly embarrassed. But I think in this particular case, especially considering China's domestic economic challenges, China's response is very restrained in the sense that the hitting back of tariffs is sort of in different realms and very steady. They also demonstrated a full range of hitting back capacity without actively trying to escalate the tension. But that being said, I think President Xi Jinping is also ready to prepare the Chinese economy and political system to endure a period of 吃苦 or eat bitterness. And in fact, we can make the argument, it's safe to say, he has spent his entire political career to prepare for exactly this moment.
And so I want to ask you about this article that came out for Foreign Policy, suggesting that these tariffs on China may actually help Xi in the long run. Do you see that as the case?
I think I'm familiar with this kind of argument, but I also think that
Trump's tariffs are a gift to Xi. Despite the steep tax on China, the U.S.-led economic roller coaster could work out in Beijing's favor. Huh. Well, tell me why.
they might overestimate China's ability to address or to capitalize the Trump administration's foreign policy circus, in the sense that although we no longer read in the news on a day-to-day basis, the Chinese economy is in a dump or in economic malaise, we focus more on what is happening here in this country. But that does not necessarily mean the Chinese policymakers has solved China's economic challenges. In fact, they haven't. And in the long run, it makes sense for President Xi Jinping to cite the current Trump administration's policies as China containment. Hence, China should double down on self-sufficiency or self-reliance. But that is going to come at the cost of boosting domestic household consumption. And a lack of domestic consumption has been a problem dragging down the Chinese economy and triggered the whole concern from the rest of the world about China's industrial overcapacity challenge, which leads to the rise of international trade barriers against Chinese export.
Zoe Liu, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.